What up, my friends? Day is it like, I don't know, 3:14 or something like that. Anyway, I was just thinking about this. Well, I had like an interaction with my mom, right? And I love my mom, don't get me wrong. We've had our issues, of course. But after the election, she had posted this like Handmaid's Tale picture, like that's where we're going to, or something like that. Like, we're not going back, like that was ever a thing. It's a fictional story. It was a fictional short story that became a pretty good TV show, you know what I mean? But she said that her biggest failing as a mother with me was my lack of empathy. And she might be right. I probably have a lack of online empathy for sure. And I might have quite a bit. Well, I'm empathetic in person, am I overly like emotionally and this and that? No. But if I see someone who's in need, I don't care what their background is or their sexuality or anything like that. I'll help them out. Situation happened the other day, and whether or not they were illegals or whatever, they couldn't speak English, they couldn't figure out the thing that they were trying to use as an air pump, and I got out and I helped them and showed them how to use it, and there was a language barrier there, but whatever. But that's not what I'm saying. I mean, it is, but she may be right. And my thoughts on the matter, like, so if people know my background, which most of the people on a lot of these platforms do not that I have a big, huge following, but I'm a stranger to most, right? But I've had a pretty tumultuous childhood, and then into my adulthood I did a lot of messed up things, probably a lot of it lack of empathy. But like, so I really want to get these stories out, right? And I think about, because people, like, I'll talk to people, I'll tell them things about my past and this and that, and they're like, you need to write a book. And the hardest part about it is, and I am empathetic because I do want to write a book, right, and tell my story. But in telling my story, I want to be empathetic to my mom, because my mom was doing the best she could with what she had at the time, or, her mental state, everything, you know what I mean? The outside influences, this and that. And, and then, of course, I have the retrospective perspective of today and hearing a lot of the stories that I experienced, but through an adult's vision that they witnessed and told me about. And of course that's, altered in their mind because of maybe their relationships with my mom and past, present, future, And so like, I do want to get it out. I do have a plan to do it, but I have to be very mindful of how I tell the story. I have to be very mindful of how I, my perspective is on it. And I have to, so in that way, I have empathy, right? Like when she said that to me, that her biggest failing as my mom was, her lack of instilling empathy in me. I went to all this other stuff about like my past, and I vented it with like my girl, and, I've in my mind, and, like I should have said this, but, in actuality, no, I should, in that moment, no, I shouldn't have said that and this and blah, 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 right? And I didn't, I just said, I was like, look, that's a fictional story. I said, you got nothing to worry about. Everything's going to be okay. Just stop amping yourself up, and I'm like, but anyway, and I left it at that. So I do want to get my story out. There's always stuff going on in my head, right? Especially out here when I'm walking, I contemplate like how I would do it. I like to do things on video, and maybe I'll transcribe it that way. And, like the next year, I just really plan on doing some things that I've always been wanting to do. And now I think I'm at a point in my life that I could achieve these things, these goals, writing a book, learning some life skills that I need, for these things, for like videos and, different things like that. And dealing with my children and raising them properly. But, and I always have like these projects in my mind for my windows at my shop, right? Like right now I have this big anti-war one, and, and I'm thinking of a new one about consumerism, whatever, I mean, it's like it's taking place in my mind, and I have the whole idea for it, and, I got the webs of deception, and the other one where it's all these spider webs, a big spider, and all the cell phones hanging from the webs, and, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so in some ways, and I've also been through a lot of deaths, and, and I've done a lot of messed up things criminally, and, just degenerate lifestyle, fatherless lifestyle, I like to say, right? And, I was taught those things through my childhood, and, the people that my mother decided to surround me with, including herself, and, and I have some issues with it, but also, if it wasn't for all of those things, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't have the children. You know what I'm saying, right? The whole timeline would have been different, So I'm here now, and I do, I feel the need to get it out, but I do feel the need to get it out in a way that is empathetic to my mother, but I also don't want to censor myself, to get the story out in order to not hurt her feelings, I also could take time on it, and, my mom's old. I'm not, I don't wish it. I want my mom to live another 20, 30, 40 years. She's 75, she works out, she's doing all right, I mean, and that's another part of the story, right? Where we're at today, comparatively to my childhood, to my teenage years, to my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, and things that have gone on between us, And today we're at a pretty decent place, I think that the fear porn on the mainstream media, I say a lot of people are news headline readers. They just read the headline, they don't, and if they do read, and then if they're advanced, they'll read the first 2 paragraphs, but they don't read down further where it tells, that it's all speculation, isn't it? But, okay, so, but that's the only thing, right? It's like a difference in political opinions, and, what she thinks is going to happen because of this past election, and what I believe, and blah, 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 blah. But anyway, so there is a way, and it is a story of redemption, both for myself and my mom. But, I mean, some of the stuff that's happened is very, very raw, is very graphic, and violent, and just very degenerate lifestyles, and the things that were instilled in me as a young kid and into my teens, and that's not just inside of my household, but a lot of it was, and I'm talking, some pretty criminal and bad stuff, and it wasn't all, some of it came from the outside in, and it was a lot of stuff, and like I said, there is a lot of redemption in the story. So, but I have to figure out how to lay it out. I'm not a writer. I've never really written anything. I've written some short stories and started a screenplay. A lot of the stories that I started them and I didn't finish. This one I don't have to make anything up because it's all in here. I mean, my recollection of it, because of course memories are what we make of them over time, I guess, right? But again, hindsight's 2020. I made a lot of the same bad choices in my life that my mom did, and that, I was put through as a young kid, as were my children, and it wasn't as bad, but in their eyes, it probably is, So I have to put it all into perspective. And instead of firing off at the hip when she said that, I did think about it, and I talked it over in my head. I said some things in front of my girl, not nothing that she hasn't heard before in my story, but I kind of put them together. And, it would have been a bad move to make a video of that rant, it would have been a bad move to type that out in text form, under our back and forth conversation online, I mean, maybe it would have been a better phone conversation, but even at that point, it wouldn't have benefited her or myself, and it probably would have caused some more division between us, way more than is needed. And, So in that way, I am empathetic. You know, I do have some empathy. I do have some understanding. You know, I love my mother. I don't want other people to hate my mother. You know, in telling this story, I'm talking about myself, but you know, these other things that happen. So it's all relative to the story. I just have to figure out a way of doing it with empathy. And, you know, I'll get there. But that's my plan, man. I'll talk to you when I talk to you. Peace, everybody.